This round of Aspers are pretty easy to decide whether you should summon or skip. Too long didn't watch is skip everything, summon for Embla. If you want to hear out my explanation, then stick around. So first unit I'm going to go over is Uran. Is an easy skip. He is only useful in Falsetto Fantasy for Forbiter. He's not used in Dark Starlord, he's not used in Counter Sonica. You can also use him in Calamity Tower in the Flow one, but Flow Tower is really easy. You know, Donar is also a very good DPS, AoE DPS for Flow type that is free. You have Ethan. If you already have an Ethan, then he's going to be your AoE defense breaker. Hilda is also a very good AoE defense breaker. You don't need Uran in the Flow Tower for you to do well. And then for PvP, he is pretty much useless. Sleep debuff is extremely bad in PvP unless you have an R6 Hilda, and even still, you don't really want to slot in Uran with an R6 Hilda. You want to slot in another Esper instead of Uran, because he only does a little bit of extra damage for your team. You don't need this Apotropaic buff for you to really do well with an R6 Hilda in your team. So without R6 Hilda, it's safe to say that he's garbage, because you can sleep the enemy for a million turns. It doesn't matter, because once you hit that enemy, they will just wake up. And then also poison or dot effects will just wake up the enemy. So Uran is an easy skip. Now comes Leora. In my opinion, Leora is also an easy skip, because her role right now is only just to speed farm Chronos. Chronos is not really a Ritual Miracle that I advise you guys to farm. His runes are so bad that you only look for this Windwalker set. The rest is so garbage that you don't end up using them at all. The War set is already power crept by the Thunder set. This one is only used for PvP, but in PvP, you can only use this set for Point War, and not that many Espers use this set. And then these three sets are also throwaway set. You will only use them if you try to look for specific stats in the substats, not so much for their effect, right? The only rune that you are looking for in Chronos is this Windwalker set, because you need one really fast Windwalker set for your account, right? And that's only for Point War, because the direction this game has been going, where they implement rival runes, your PvP relics doesn't really matter that much. You want to be farming like either Apep, Fafnir or Andras for that PvE relics, so that you can score well in PvE. Chronos doesn't give you PvE relics. It gives you only this relic that is good for Point War, not for Knockout, not for Beatbout, because those two don't use your real relics. Leora is only pretty much being used for Chronos speedruns, but she is still the best at clearing the waves. You can still maybe use her for APAP, but you don't really need to anymore. You can even use Donar to clear the waves. Fafnir, some people do use her in Fafnir speed clearing as well, just for the waves. In Shadowfire, you can still use her, but she is also been pushed out as well. Not many people use her. Yeah, you will only use her if you have like really high resonance on her, and that's pretty much all her usage, right? Falsetto Fantasy, she has seen no use at all, because her burst is really good, but her DPS or damage per turn is pretty bad. So you won't be running her in any of these three bosses. In PvP, she's pretty good if you have like really high resonance on her, because her resonance will carry her stats and she could potentially just one-shot someone. But at low resonance, you can't really do much with her. She's gonna be squishy. As soon as the buff, the invincibility buff is gone, she will just end up dying. R0 is not worth it anymore, I don't think, and her resonance doesn't really change her that much. I don't think spending 70 wish stones to get her resonance higher, maybe all the way to up 6, is worth it anymore, because her resonance doesn't really change the unit that much. It makes her slightly better. You kind of want to go for units that, you know, are game changing when it comes to resonance, not something like Leora that is not really that game changing anymore. Ollie is also a pretty easy one. I would say he's a skip at this point. He's again only used in in Chronos speedruns, and that's it. The only place that I use my Ollie, and I have an R6 Ollie, is in Chronos. That's it. I use him nowhere else. Not in Falsetto Fantasy. I don't even use him in Calamity Island. I lied. I use him in Shadow Glow, but only in this one, in this team right here. The rest, I don't use him at all. In PvP, I don't use him at all. I only use him in Knockout in my last team, because I literally have no other unit. He's just there for the speed lead. If I didn't have an Ollie, I would just run Yuime instead. He suffers the same fate as Leora, which is just being good at Chronos speedrun. He's still the best DPS for Chronos, but Chronos is not really a boss you want to be farming. His resonance doesn't really change that much on him. Before we had like all these crazy espers with crazy resonance, his R2 was pretty good, but it was still not worth it for you to use Wish Stones on it. It's something nice to have. And now that we have all these crazy espers with crazy resonance like R6 Liam and R6 Lian, his R2 resonance just is not a priority at all anymore. All of his resonance pretty much is not a priority. So yeah, easy skip. And then the rerun in the upcoming banners is going to be Ggez and Embla. I'm going to go over Ggez first. So Ggez has really fallen in pretty much all areas that he used to excel in. In Chronos, he was power crept by Leora because Leora only takes 1 turn to clear the waves. He is still being used for Desolate Lands, and that's mainly for those who have him at really high resonance. Donar is just better than him, but for those who already have him at R6 D6, then he could still do something for you in Shadowfire. In Falsetto Fantasy, he's only being used in Dark Starlord. In some people's team, again, that's only for R6 D6. Below that, he doesn't really work that well. If you go to the leaderboard, some people do still run a Ggez, but when you take a look at how much they have invested in their Ggez, you will realize that, you know, using a Ggez at low resonance or low dupes is not going to be really good for you. So this guy has R6 and D2. Again, not really a good idea to be running Ggez because he eats up way too many turns in this bossing contents. You can run other DPS that can provide similar stuff than him. Again, another R6 D6 Ggez. So yeah, he's only used in Dark Starlord out of the 3 bosses, and he's still not the best at it, even with maximum investment on him. Counter Sonica is not that good. Forbiter, he's also not that good because again, his main problem is eating up way too many turns just to do his 1 nuke, and then, you know, his cycles also pretty bad as well. To go back to the non-god mode, that's also gonna eat up 1 extra turn to do very small nuke. In PvE, his main problem is just eating up way too many turns for him to do his nukes, right? In PvP, it's the same scenario as well. The only people that use him is the people that have him at R6 D6, and even still, his win rate is pretty bad. Yeah, see, his win rate is really bad, like 34%, 17%. This one is pretty good, but it has an Ana once again, 50% with the Tolan, and then 18%, 57% with the Tolan, 16%. Yeah, it's very low. In PvP, he has fallen off quite significantly because he's an AoE Esper. We have Emma to counter AoE Espers, we have Ana to guaranteed counter, we have Hyde that is type advantage against him. I have him at R6 again, no Divinate. I don't use him anywhere, like literally he has 0 use for me. I don't use him in PvE at all. I don't use him in PvP at all. It's not like he got nerfed or something, he just wasn't able to keep up with other Espers. The reason why he was so busted is because guaranteed crits on his nuke, right? And at that time, it was completely busted. Getting a guaranteed crit on your attack as a DPS means that you don't need to add any crit rate to your stats, so you can go all into your attack, crit damage, and speed. But now we have units that does like 10 million different things, like Feng Shun. Not only does he guaranteed crits, he's also providing supports to all of your allies. He's also healing, he's also attack buffing, he's also defense breaking. You know, these power creeps make Ggez less and less viable. His R0 is not worth it. It's nice to have an R0 Ggez as a new player, but you will not be using him anymore. And if you have a Leora, you probably won't be using him at all anymore. His resonance isn't that game changing at all. Again, it's nice to have if you do pull him in Go Records, but it's not good to waste Wish Stones on him, because Wish Stones should be used to get broken resonance at this point. Speaking of broken resonance, the next Esper that is going to rerun is Embla. So Embla, she has 2 broken resonance. First off is R2, and then the next breakpoint is R6. So when it comes to Embla, her R0 is still also worth it because she is used for all bosses, all Falsetto Fantasy. So if you summon for her, you're gonna get more rewards in the long run, which means you can summon more, you can get more divinates. In Dark Starlight is where she shines the most, because of her corrupted seed. This corrupted seed is completely busted in Dark Starlight, and if you take a look at the leaderboard, pretty much everyone that is top 100 right now is running an Embla. You cannot go without an Embla. She is just the best DPS in Dark Starlight. Not just Dark Starlight, she is also the best DPS for 4-bitter. For Sonica, however, it is a bit weird because Sonica reduces incoming damage when you don't do multi-hits. So since Embla is not a multi-hit Esper, she doesn't do that much damage against Sonica. She's good for all bosses. I can't really show you for Sonica or 4-bitter, but she is the best for 4-bitter, and she's also really good for Sonica. Unfortunately, for other PvE contents, she is not that good. For all these bosses, she's not that good. You can still use her for APAP, but that's pretty much it. She's not used for DISLYTE Lens because she's a debuff based character. She's very good for event trials that you can debuff. And in PvP, she is unusable because she is a debuff based character, and this unit exists, Jin Yu Yao right here. Jin Yu Yao completely shuts down debuff based character, right? So it's not really Embla's fault. But alas, I think she's still a must summon because she just adds so much to your 4-bitter, Sonica and Dark Starlight. Without Embla, you can't really compete against anyone that has Embla in all these 3 bosses. Now, which threshold should you stop? If you don't have her, you get her R0. If you want to go for her R2, which is also advisable, you should at least have 100 Wishstones backup because you never know what the next Esper is going to be, right? The next Esper is going to be completely busted, and if you don't have Wishstones during his banner, then you're kind of out of luck. So go for her R2 if you have excess Wishstones, at least 100, and then go for her R6 if you have excess Wishstones again, at least 100. And then lastly, the new unit in the PTR server is Fumitsuki. She's not a PvE Esper, she is a PvP Esper, and in my opinion, she is also an easy skip. Her kit is all over the place. So for those who don't know, what she does is, when the enemy is below 50% HP, she will pursuit attack with her basic ability, and when she is above 50% HP, she will gain this bamboozled buff, which is her S1 will inflict stun on the target, which is irresistible. Her S3 is attacks all enemies, heals your allies by 15% of max HP, and also if the enemy is below 50% HP, she gains shield for 2 turns, which is 60% of her HP. Why is she not a PvE character? Is because bossing contents doesn't have HP threshold, so they will never go below 50% HP. Bosses like Falsetto Fantasy, she cannot be used. DISLYTE Lens, she cannot be used. You can use her in Fafnir. I think she's gonna be pretty good for Fafnir just for that one hit once you do the nuke. If you don't kill the boss, then you can follow up with her, right? But that's a very specific scenario that I don't think it warrants you to summon for her. She's not going to be used for any other PvE contents. And then for PvP, she is a very weird character because you kind of want her to do damage with the pursuits, but they gave her no attack. 1.5k attack, 150 crit damage with the rival runes. So with no damage on her rival runes and not being a HP based character, she's not really going to do much for you. And also the bamboozle buff is conditional. If it wasn't conditional, she might be really good. Her S3 cooldown is also a very high cooldown, 4 turns. And she's gonna be spamming her S1, which does buff blocker, which is nice. But Mavis, which is the unit that you want to apply the buff block, is type advantage against her. So she's gonna miss 50% of the time against a Mavis. And most of the time she won't be even targeting Mavis because she's type disadvantage. The only real way that you can make her function in PvP to really get the benefit of this bamboozle buff is by giving her Avatara, and they didn't even give her Avatara. They gave her like HP set. If they gave her Avatara, I would still say it's not worth it to summon for her, but giving her the growth set means that she cannot counter attack with her S1, and she cannot really apply the stuns unless your ally attacks enemies that have below 50% HP. Yeah, even though the stun is irresistible, it's still just single target, and single targets are always going to be iffy. It relies heavily on AI. If the AI is stupid, then she is not really going to work that well. I might be proven wrong. She might be like GOAT in PvP, but I really can't see it with the AI that we have in this game, she's not really gonna do much for you in PvP. She's gonna be very niche. Her R2 though is actually very good. Dispels 2 buffs from the target before casting an ability, so her S3 will now become a AoE strip, at least 2 buffs, right? Her S1, every time that you pursuit attack, is going to remove 2 buffs from the enemy, so that's good. She now becomes a buff stripper. The way I can see her shine the most is when you have her at R6, when she gets this bamboozle buff throughout the combat. So now it's no longer conditional. You don't need to have above 50% HP to get the buff. You will just have it up at all times. So whenever she casts the S1, she's always gonna be stunning. I would say if you get really lucky, like extremely lucky, you summon on gold record, you pull like R5 of her, it might be worth it to go 70 wish stones to summon for her R6. But again, for the most part, going for her R0 is not worth it. I don't think going for her R2 from R1 may be worth it if you get lucky from gold record and you pull 2 copies of her to get her to R1, and then you spend 70 wish stones to get her R2. That might be worth it. But if you don't have her, then you would need to spend 100 wish stones on her first copy, which is too much. And yeah, that's about it. Most of these reruns are gonna be skips, except for a few R6 resonance. So with the discounted wish stones to summon on resonance, it's highly encouraged to go for broken resonance. What I mean by broken resonance is something like R6 Sally, really good. It completely changes the unit from being unusable to top tier. Another broken R6 is going to be Lian. She's completely brain dead at R6. Another one is Liam. Hilda is also a very broken R6. Now the sleep debuff cannot be interrupted anymore. And we also have leaks in the game itself that this unit is coming, right? This unit is most likely the unit that we see in DISLYTE's Discord banner. So you might want to save wish stones for him because he comes out around April 20 something, if I'm not mistaken. And that's around DISLYTE anniversary. This guy might be completely busted. He might be a shimmer. If he is a shimmer, then you're out of luck. You cannot summon wish stones with him. But if he's not a shimmer, there's a highly likelihood that he has broken resonance. And that's the point that you kind of want to spend your wish stones on, right? Broken espers. So yeah, that's about it. Again, most of these are just going to be skips, except for Embla because she has broken resonance. That's about it. Ciao.